this city saved my life. And it's not only done that, but it's saved my wife. Like all our friends are in trouble, and our kids are doing really well. And so now I sell art for whatever people want to pay as a way to give back. Because I honestly believe this city saved my life. And so now I have my art studio and gallery opening soon. I'm going to give art lessons to kids for free on Dominic Street. It's in the West End by Bruges.
Sure. We're going to be busy with the market.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
But I come back here almost every evening for a bit of just to decompress, have a can or two. And
So,
is there enough light?
yeah, plenty of
Bad state. And I was selling drugs. And I was going to lose my wife and kids, and I thought I might die. And I was in my bathtub just like, fuck, this is... And I was kind of just half hoping I would slip into that water and not come out of it, and that my kids wouldn't see me suffering anymore. I wouldn't cause any more harm to them. And an angel came into my bathtub, and right away I was thinking, these are fantastic drugs. And he was like, you gotta paint, and everything's gonna be fine. I was like, what? You're in the wrong bathtub. This is... I don't believe in God. I'm adamant, like not a doubt in my heart. Just, this is hilarious. I'm on drugs right now. I'm doing ketamine. I'm an atheist. And he said, yeah, he was laughing, and he said, yeah, God needs an atheist for this job. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, I'm fucking my own head right now on these five. I was thinking, I gotta fucking get off these drugs. And he said, the guards are gonna come to your house in 3 days. They're gonna kick in your door. And they're gonna arrest you. You need to get rid of all the drugs in your house. You just stop selling drugs and start painting. I was like, that was the fucking wildest trip. That's all I could think of. But I was nervous about, like, I'm just going to get the drugs out of my house for a day. And I told the kids, like, look, on the off chance that the guards come tomorrow, I want you to know I was selling drugs. I've gotten rid of them. I don't think they're going to come, but if they come, I want you to stay calm and know that there's nothing in the house. That's how much I believed it, And the guards came, the fucking battering ram, and they came and they flipped my house, and my kids were fucking dead calm. Told them my dad was selling drugs before. He's not anymore. He gave them up. And they're just really confused and shocked. And I showed them things like, I have some souvenirs from it, So there'd be a wall of like 200 spray paint cans, and I opened that up, and I showed them inside it. This is all that was left because there was more of them. But it's basically like, I'll show you that on one given day, I might have 110 grams of mixed cocaine, 1,030 grams, a kilo of unmixed cocaine from Colombia, and then 460 or 500 grams of ketamine. It was large scale. I would have done 10 years in jail if they'd caught me. And
has this been going on for a while?
I had started during COVID just to help pay some bills. I met a guy who was like, oh, I just want to do this weighing at your house. And because of my childhood, I'd worked with some bikers. We'd processed cannabis leaves and shake into oil, and we would take bricks of cocaine and cut them up and repress them into 2 bricks of cocaine. And it's something they'd get kids to do because they could trust us. Where all we want is a big bag of weed, and we're happy enough to work in our boxer shorts, and someone watches how to do it, and we learned these jobs as young kids. So I showed him, look, I can make you more cocaine. I used that. This vise up here, some blocks of wood, and acetone, acetate, and lidocaine, which is a synthetic numbing agent dentists use. Pure caffeine powder, another chemical powder called inosalt, which has a tendency to rock up to clumps. And so I'd melt it all together into a paste and press it up. And then these lads would come and pick up like massive amounts of drugs from my house. And it started, I was just trying to make a bit of money, and then they told me that I was missing 500 grams of cocaine. And I knew I wasn't. I know this hustle from when I was a kid. I was they're trying to work me. And it's the same way they did to me when I was a little kid, and it's just fucking horrible. And then I could see the people coming working for them were all kids that they had hooked on drugs. And it was dark. The thing I'd left Vancouver for to raise my kids here, and I'm bringing it and I'm helping it be here and grow here. And it was eating at my soul. But I always was like, oh, I could justify it. Sure, Black Lives Matter movement's on right now. And look at all these black lads. They're organized and working together and they're building an industry. And I'm helping empower them because they could never get good jobs. If they did, they'd never get a fair wage. It was all justified mumbo jumbo shit in my head. I could justify stealing the shoes off a baby. It was so easy because there wasn't a higher authority of morality, And even as an atheist, I think you need to submit to something bigger than yourself. Because if you're God, you can murder. Like even if you don't believe in a God, you can believe in the word of God and the structure of it. And that we don't march to our own drum. We march to the beat of the human heart covers this globe. We need to so anyways, the cops came. I thought, oh, that was fucking brilliant. Like I should dodge this. And I still had some in my attic, and I was fucking partying it up and fucking having a great time. And I was in my bath about a week later, and God came into my bathtub, and he didn't say anything to me. And again, this is fucking just so insane. It wasn't an angel. This is just fucking huge golden entity. And I didn't see him put a hand on my head. And I felt like this golden fucking tingling all down my spine and in my throat. And I just got out of the bathtub fully naked, and I went into the bedroom in front of my wife, and I barged into the door, and we'd been fighting, and she was really mad at me, and I was sleeping in a guest room, and I fucking threw myself like a fucking magnet. She slammed me on the fucking ground, pressed my head into the ground. It was so scary. It was so fucking scary. And I just sat naked lying there, and I didn't know what to do. It was just such a fucking weight. Like nothing I've ever imagined could push me that hard. And I started saying the Our Father, and it fucking released. I couldn't remember all the words. I just struggle. It's been so long. I was just so scared. And the only other times I'd prayed was when my baby was born 3 months early and he went into the hospital. He was just a little fucking clump of flesh hooked up to machines. I'd go and pray every day. And a little bit when I got cancer, and you realize, like in your darkest moments when you're alone, you look for something bigger than you, something higher than you. And surely when we're strong, when we're doing well, we should still remember that, And so I started praying, and I felt just like a weight lifting off me. And like within the next day, I was calling my family that I hadn't talked to and just apologizing for things I'd done wrong. I was apologizing to everyone I could think of instantly. I just wanted to be forgiven, and I wanted to forgive everyone who'd ever done anything. I was calling people that had done stuff wrong to me and just telling them, hey, it's okay, I forgive you. And they were confused. And then I just started trying to help people, and I felt like I was a different person inside. And then before I started looking at the Bible at all, I asked, because I was so confused, and I asked ChatGPT, how do you live like Jesus? Like, just tell me the basic fundamentals, things I have to do to live like Jesus. I don't know if I have it in my notepad here. It was 7 sentences. And I would look at it every day, at every instance, whenever I was confused about what to do. And the next thing you know, I had 4 Ukrainians living in my house, and I was painting on the street and letting everyone take my art for whatever they could afford. And then was giving money to the homeless every day, and I got to know all of the Romanians in town and all the homeless. And I don't know, it was and then my The HSE had been cyber attacked. So for 3 months, there was no talk with doctors. The last thing they'd told me is it looked like it was going into my lymph nodes. And I went back to the hospital after they reopened, and they told me I was in remission. And they said, you still want to cut out your larynx because you're never going to speak again. Your voice will never work. I said, nope, I'm going to get through this. And I did my radiation, and you're all right. Was communicating with my kids with whistles. Like if I was like, I mean, Shane, Hayden, dinner time. And I taught them these whistles before. And I had a notepad and I'd write stuff. And it was like, I wanted to talk. I used to sing to my boys every night till they were 10 and 11. Every night I'd come home from work, and if they were asleep, I'd go in and sing them songs. So I used to sing them to Shane when he was this little baby in the incubator. 75 days, I'd have to go to the hospital and see him after work. And I'd just sing into this little porthole. And then
I just for my own.
a lot of Paul Simon. My mom sang me Paul Simon when I was a baby, and it always really soothed me. And but then a couple other songs too, like "You Are My Sunshine" and "The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow." Um, there's another song called "John Cougar, John Deere, John 316." So it's just like a country song. Everything I needed to know, I learned from John Cougar, John Deere, and John 316. And my dad used to sing that. And up till I was 5 years old, I was actually in Calgary, and my father was the head of social services for a metropolitan city, and we had tickets to the Olympics. He had an office above the mayors and city halls. Like, we were in choir and gymnastics and horse riding camps and like really active life. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she sewed our own clothes. And when I was 5, my dad left. My mom and him were arguing a lot and fighting, and he just moved out, and my mom got mad and sold the house, and she moved us to Vancouver Island. It felt like out of spite, and we never really had him in our lives again. 2 older brothers. Yeah, 2 years older and 4 years older. And so we went to like living with my single mom on welfare. And she'd always been a stay-at-home mom, and she didn't really have, I don't know if she had the work skills. She was always seemed to be working 2 jobs and still trying to put us in piano lessons and stuff like as much as she could. And she just worked so hard that she was always asleep. I always just saw my mom sleeping on the couch if I saw her. And I learned to cook from a really young age. I learned to do grocery shopping at a really young age. My brothers started to get into like first like really heavy metal, and then sort of like satanic stuff, and a lot of drugs, and a little bit of like they hung out with like sort of racist fucking like heavy metal kids. And um we lived in a really poor neighborhood, and that kind of outcasted me from everyone there unless I wanted to be in that social group. So I went to like sort of the next neighborhood over, which was even like rougher and a much more rap oriented sort of urban, a lot more hip hop and breakdancing, a lot more crime, a lot more drugs, and a lot more violent. For Canadian standards, I think in the 90s, Vancouver Island is, and some of the most violent times, I think. Um, it was just in the culture of the music. It was so gangster rap was all the rage, and everyone wanted to be a gangster. Everyone wanted to be a drug dealer. And our marijuana was getting traded with the states for cocaine, and that was all coming into our city. So there's just a lot of cocaine getting coming, a lot of marijuana being grown. And then we're in the poorest neighborhood, so that's kind of the epicenter of where it gets dealt and moved around, and a lot of the money's in there. And then there was a lot of crack and a lot of heroin and crystal meth. And you grow up as a kid with like a safe injection site in your neighborhood. There's needles all over the place, and a library closed down, and a funeral home opened up. That's a dismal position. Like you used to get books there, and now your friends are buried overdosing. And then like it just it got really dark. It got really dark and horrible, and I I would leave my house every day, and 50% of the time I'd get robbed for my shoes or just punched in the head or just beat up by other kids. So I joined a gang and I got tattooed into it at 13. And we were sort of, we worked for the drug dealers in our neighborhood. They would only sell drugs to 14 and under. So if you get caught, they just, police would let you go. They'd give you $200 if you didn't say anything. It was a bonus. So we would deliver to junkies and crackheads in our neighborhood and BMXs, and we'd get free weed and LSD. But that got really horrible. Like at one point, they had me go into an apartment building, and one kid sat at the end of the hall with a pen laser on the camera because these Chinese gangsters were hiding weed or cocaine in the radiator outside their apartment, in the vent, so that if they got busted, it's outside in the air vent, but they have their own camera installed on the air vent. So we go in and shine a pen laser on the thing, and I have to take the fucking cocaine out of the fucking air vent and bring it out to Uncle Pete, my friend's uncle, who overdosed on crack and died eventually, or heroin. I don't know what he died of, but he's dead. And we get 3 ounces of cocaine out of there. And basically, I took a bunch of cocaine and some cash, but my friends went and smoked crack with him and his buddies for about a weekend. Every time I went by, they were all smoking crack, just little kids. And another time I went to this house to buy weed, the same drug dealers, and a guy was overdosed on a carpet, and they wanted to pay us to roll him in a carpet. And I didn't want to roll him in the carpet. Like, we'd agreed to, but I didn't want to put a body into a dumpster. And probably mostly selfishly, but also it just felt so horrible. And I'd done a CPR course, but I couldn't like put my mouth on him in front of these guys. I'm just a kid, and it just felt, I wasn't confident enough to do that. But I knew to uh staying alive, and that's all I did, just jokingly, quite loud, like singing the song, like playfully, like everyone was like ha ha ha, and he starts coughing, and so we roll him onto his stomach, he pukes on the carpet, we get him up into a chair, they pay us some cash, and we fuck off. And that was like when I went, my mom, the next time I got arrested, and I didn't want to call my foster home because they would notify it was a breach of my probation. Like, as a young kid, I well knew the system, so I used my mom's maiden name and I gave her phone number, and she got a call. Patrick Roberts is down here, and they were like, okay. She knew right away, like, oh, I better go fucking get my son out of the police station, because she knew I was on probation. I'd go back to jail. So she came down to the cell, and she was, I was still in the mall security at that point. And so she came down, and she's like, if you don't fucking tell me what's going on in your life, because I hadn't seen her for a while. I was living in foster homes and group homes. And she said, you don't tell me what's going on in your life, I'm going to tell them your real name, and they'll take you down to the police station. And I said, okay. Well, I told her, like, I'm really fucked. She was like, we're going to send you to boarding school in Galway. We're going to get you a passport and a different name, and we'll get you on a fucking plane, and bring you to boarding school, and I'll pay for your tuition, and I'll leave you there. My family from Donegal, my uncle had tracked him down, and he'd come out and got to know all our family, and he was kind of doing a family tree, before Ancestry, before all the internet. And he was just doing it, meeting everyone. And then he'd found Galway, and he'd stayed here for about a year. And he had gone back to Canada and told my mom, look, I know a boarding school in Galway, bring him there. And she said to him, like, I can't afford it. She was like, he's just fucking dump him there. He's going to be dead in a year if you leave him on these streets. And all my friends I grew up, all the kids I got tattooed, like 30 kids I got tattooed. Can't track most of them down, but I've seen a lot of the celebrations of life online. It's sad. Like, one of my best friends that I grew up with as a kid just died of fentanyl overdose 2 weeks ago, and he's 40, and he's like the oldest of them all. Like, he made it the longest, other than me. Yeah, it's a synthetic opioid that's 50 times stronger, and so like a grain of salt can kill you. So it's used as a cutting agent to make you just use tiny bits of it. But it also, from what I've learned, it has a electromagnetic property similar to when you get a ready-made baking cake. You just add water and one egg. It'll always say anti-caking agent, because the baking soda and baking powders, they'll tend to go back together from their electrical charge. They'll clump into little clusters. So they put a tiny bit of this niacin powder, something in there that stops them from going back together. Well, drug dealers haven't figured that part out in the fentanyl process. So when they cut in a bunch of fentanyl and it sits in a bag, maybe it's shaken around or sits around too long, it has a tendency to go back together and form little clusters. So it's really easy for junkies to get a heavy dose of fentanyl inside their fixes. I've seen that in some Vice documentaries. I don't know if that's accurate, but so yeah, it's very, very strong and just wiped out a lot of people. Yeah, well, and then this is in the late 90s, and I'm living in the school. I don't know anyone here, so it's just right away from day one, clean and sober. Could smoke cigarettes in business class, which was awesome. So I still smoked the whole time, but it wasn't until after I'd left the school that I found a little bit of hash in Galway in the early 2000s, but it wasn't a regular thing. And I drank a lot, but by the time I went back to Canada in 2000, 2001, and I would smoke a lot of weed in Canada because it was almost legal at that point, and but never hard drugs, never anything like that. I didn't never even when I got back, I could see the effects that it had on all my friends. A lot of my friends missing teeth from meth. A lot of girls had turned to prostitution that we'd grown up with. It's just a girl I knew from the neighborhood, and we'd gotten really close. And we'd been communicating for a number of years in letters, and she was she had a got pregnant at 15, so she was or maybe 14. Maybe she had him at 15 or 16, and she'd been violently assaulted by some people I knew. And I was actually in the I'd gone back to the hospital because one of the priests from the school, Father Lucre, was working as the I don't know what they call the hospital priest. Yeah, chaplain. It was the chaplain at the hospital. And I just made an appointment to pop in to talk to him because I used to talk to him in boarding school. It was hard. It was away from all my family. And so I went and talked to him and I said, some days I feel like I have a calling to maybe go to the priesthood. I'd like to read a lot and it's nice to talk about philosophy and stuff. And I said, but there's also this girl back home, and he said, there's a lot of ways you can serve God, Patrick. That's amazing to go back home. And I told him, I kind of want to go back and marry this girl, raise this kid, because I lost my father in that fucking neighborhood, and it was so shitty. And I saw my mother in her, like same little woman, just trapped in this fucking neighborhood with a baby, and I felt like it made me strong, like I had strength to go back and I was going to marry her and bring her back to Galway. And that took 13 years. And by the time we came back, Seth was 15 and he wanted to stay with his grandma. He didn't want to move out here. So he stayed. And then shortly after we left, he transitioned and we never talked again, which was really hard because I loved that boy like my own child. And I don't know, I've heard he's suicidal. His mom doesn't like to talk about him. It's really hard. She has a trouble and he doesn't talk to me. And no, I think that's a different. I feel like I was directly controlled by people right in front of me, and it seemed like something that was preventable, and um, I don't understand what happened between us. I was always a loving father, and it was never like oh, you're just my stepson situation. But we'd had two babies of our own, and he'd always been very close with his grandmother. And when we left, we thought we'd all be in contact, and he'd come out for a visit soon. And um, as soon as I got back, I got a job as a pot washer, and I worked my way up to chef, like in the top 5-star hotels in Canada. I worked in just as a sort of assistant for the national culinary team. They were based in one of the hotels I worked at. So it was a chef named Brad Horan, and he actually had gotten, when the year I was working with him there, he'd won the most gold medals in like Bocuse d'Or and Haute Olympia, like the largest cooking competitions in Europe. Come up from our little island hotel, and they did really well. So I was learning some phenomenal culinary skills and like really ahead of the trend. And then by 2012, I owned my own bakery, and that was really successful. And I sold it within 6 months. Someone wanted to buy it off me, and I negotiated them way up, and I didn't even want to sell it. I didn't want to sell it, so I kept making astronomical demands. And eventually they met me at a point, and I told the wife, like, oh, they want to give me a cashier's check for 60 grand. She was like, go get it. And I was like, can we move to Ireland? And she was like, we can move to Syria. Go get the fucking check. So we cashed the check, paid a bunch of taxes and debts off. And by the time we transferred it, what was left into euros was about 20 grand. And after we bought our flights, and yeah, we just came to Dublin with backpacks. We gave everything we owned to charity. We like KitchenAid mixers and computers and flat screens. We were just like, fuck it. Just give it to the Single Parents Resource Center and to our poor friends. Bedroom sets. There's no furnished houses you rent in Canada. You got to have all your own stuff. So just head out here with backpacks on and a big wad of cash, and we're like, let's settle in Ireland. We made it. It was so awesome. And yeah, it was a company that hired me, and they would have me like to get a contract, like to get the NUIG contract. They sent me in there to do the big show in front of all the executives, even though they knew they would never have me working there. They tried to get me to work there, but I liked just being by myself. I don't like bossing people around. I don't like telling other chefs what to do or having to yell at people. It's like I just worked by myself in there, and it was hunky dory. But yeah, that was my favorite chefing job, I think. Yeah, we went to Dublin first. Well, she didn't want to live in Galway. She thought it was too small, so she wanted to live in Dublin. And I was like, grand, I'll get you a place right off the square in Tala. And a year later, we were in Galway. Yeah, it was perfect. I worked in the Gibson Hotel right by the Three Arena there. It's a sous chef, and that was fun. We'd do like Elton John and Beyonce concerts next door. So we'd do like 5,000 people in there in one day. And then I went to Fade Street Social with Dylan McGraw, and worked in there as a sous chef for about a year, and then came to Galway. It was about maybe actually I was there for 3 or 4 months. Yeah. COVID started and we were homeschooling them, and these tics and twitches stopped, and they were reading Dostoevsky, and they were studying math. They loved math. One of my boys still homeschools math. He's 14. He's studying calculus and algebra, and he loves it. He's passionate about it because we always try to find what they want to learn and push them into that. So the other boy does photography, and he likes to read a lot, but he studies photography in depth. He's got a really nice Canon setup with tripod and spare batteries and external flash, and he does all my art photos, and he's got some great pictures. And then the other boy does math, and he studies cooking. He loves to study cooking. He's done a Ramsay's master class and another pastry chef's master class. But I try to I try to be the bow, and they're the arrows, and like I'm just trying to get them as far as I can in the direction they want to go. And after like that was forced on us homeschool, but then when I got cancer and I thought I was going to die, it was just like, oh, the whole curriculum changed. It was like, we have to study philosophy and we have to start reading books at night. And I got a list of 100 movies we have to watch. And it was like, it really changed to like, oh, there's so many things you got to learn. All my life, I didn't want to walk out on my kids. And it was forced on me. And all my life, I didn't want to be a fucking junkie. It was forced on me. And it was just another pit to crawl out of. But I didn't want to fucking say goodbye to them, And after the hospital is opened again, the last thing they said was, "You gotta come in. It's very sinister. It's in your lymph nodes. Gotta meet on Monday." And I didn't get to go see them for 3 months. And when I went back in, they were like, "Oh, you're in remission. You're okay. It's fucking. You're gonna be all right." And it was just. I feel like a lot of my art is just the same messages I wanted to tell my kids. It's just like when we were learning all the philosophy and I'd hit something or something in Hamlet, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, like, fuck, that's awesome." And it would be in a painting right away. And then it got to a point where I was like, "Oh, kids, you ever looked at the Book of John?" And we were looking at the Book of John because we're reading all the greatest pieces of literature. It was a course we were taking online. We hit the Book of John, and something in it really steered me then too. I think that was, before I had a moment of like awakening. But it's hard because sometimes, it blurs together. And you're doing fucking grams of ketamine every day and morphine every day. Like even when I'm telling it now, I'm like, what is that? Like I'd be on the streets of Shop Street. People don't know this about, but in the first couple of years, if you'd walk by me on Shop Street and I'd be kneeling over a canvas like this, and people would walk by and send me videos like, "You're just so deep in thought." It's like I was in a fucking K-hole. I was fucking nodding off on morphine. Like
You know,
I don't even think I would have ever done something like kind of have to be in a certain headspace just to be like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to quit my job and I'm just going to lay a blanket on the street and splash paint on the ground and hope for the best. I think I've always tried to not point my happiness towards things I want to have, but I base it on being grateful for what I've got. And so I think there was a passion and for creativity in me that got funneled into visual. And I make more music with my friend now as well. I sing more. But really color really, I didn't realize before how much I could express myself with just color. I don't know, there's just raw emotions in it. I don't know. And food you kind of make for flavor, and even the best food ends up in a toilet the next day. It's so temporary, it's fleeting. And then to like paint something and have it linger in their mind and their heart. I agree, but I think as well because my subjects aren't things or decorative. My subjects are ideas. My subjects are the things a father would yell at his kids as he fell off a cliff edge. And I find people often look at my work and I'll want to be like, "Oh, and they're like, I know what this is. I get this." Like a lot of, with few exceptions, like I feel like people get, and that's what I aim for. And I like to have a really divisive topic where both people on both sides are like, "Yeah, yeah, that," and I get a moment of like connect. I think it's kind of like painting for the intrinsic human value inside people and to like find ways to like bring it out of them. And they're like, "Ah, yeah." And I don't even know if it's enjoying, but it was like you come up that even the chemist said we'd never seen anyone on this much morphine. The first time I went in to get because they used to say to me, "How's the pain?" And fuck it, every time I'd be like, "It's so bad, doc. It's so much worse." They'd be like, "Okay, raise your prescription." And eventually I was stockpiling morphine at the whole house, and I had drinkable bottles that I was supposed to be finishing, but I had so much and they just keep raising it. And I think during the radiation as well, I was still using cocaine. And so I was exercising. I was running in to do radiation some days in the beginning, and they were like, you need to cut that out. And then using the ketamine would just keep me into a good mood. Sometimes I would take ecstasy as well, MDMA, like all in kind of micro doses first. It was like, oh, I'm going to make sure I stay positive. Fucking everyone who ever does microdose ends up on the macro dose. Like I don't know anyone who's had the willpower. I always all my food dishes, people used to say, like, where the fuck do you come up with this stuff? Like when I was, and then I would draw in books, like just black ink on white paper, and people would say, like, your drawings are really crazy. I always had a really creative mind. And I think that, pardon me, I think that it gets accentuated by trauma. I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but for me, or maybe not, it gets, it's how you handle the trauma. That trauma can be like, it can be so destructive if you let it, but it can be so it can be an elixir if you learn from it. Like, I think that's all trauma is like unlearned lessons, and that when you learn from them, it's so powerful. It's not a knowledge that you could teach someone else. You can't communicate to someone, oh, I learned this great lesson from my trauma. It'll never affect them. It's like the kind of knowledge that Plato would talk about that you can't communicate. It's like a perfect circle that you could never draw for someone. It's only in your mind. And I remember getting clay and plasticine. First plasticine for Christmas when I was 4 or 5. My parents were still together, and then I was getting clay, air dry clay, and I sculpted a lot when I was a boy. And I remember being really young in a pottery class, making on a wheel, and then I'm sculpting like cartoon characters with wire frames in them, and they were getting fired, and I was glazing them. And then my dad was still, this was 5 or 6. And then after my dad left and my mom, we didn't really have the art supplies and the same lessons. She always had me in piano and singing, and those teachers would teach me for free because she couldn't afford the lessons, and they both said, no, I love having Patrick here. So I got piano and vocal lessons for free. And then it was graffiti, and I started tagging, and I went into juvie for a little bit and get to practice your tag every day on a piece of paper all day long. And group homes and foster homes, all the kids do graffiti, and you live with these kids, and you wake up in the morning, and if you get along with them, you take the bus from the suburbs into city and tag on the bus and tag up the city. But it was just like dogs peeing on corners, it's just territorial, it's just ego. And then you start to see like these other kids who could do really good graffiti, and they wouldn't give us the time of day. They wouldn't talk to us because we were like from this really dangerous, rough neighborhood, and they wouldn't write in our neighborhood, and they didn't want to associate with us or talk to us. So I really wanted to know those guys. Same as the break dancers, they wouldn't talk to us. Like always, when you're in the like seedy underbelly, obviously none of these really good people want to talk to you, and you get kind of used to that. And then when I came to boarding school here, of course, I came in like all PGA golf clothes with fake gold jewelry on. I'm sorry. And I had to pretend like I was this straight A student, and I started drawing in boarding school again a little bit. And then I met my friend Aaron and moved in with him after leaving cert above Sally Long's. And we painted all the walls of our apartment and painted all the time, and we did graffiti together. We did like big pieces, and he's a great artist, and it's like always one of my artistic inspirations, Aaron Young. Um, and that's when I kind of got back into it. think that I had in my mind a vision of a Princess Buttercup from The Princess Bride. And I saw myself as the dread pirate Roberts, that Wesley the farm boy had been sent off to foreign lands to seek his wealth and riches, and I was going to go back and marry my Princess Buttercup. And I promised her I'll always love you and I'll come back for you and I'll save you. It was awesome. And it was like, that's, the dread pirate Robertson wasn't loved. He was on a pirate ship, and every day they'd say, Wesley, I'll most likely kill you in the morning. And that's, that's the kind of, sometimes that like, I've been with Jem for 26 years, we've been married for 21. There's a strong love there, do you know? Like, I think that I'm grateful for that absence of love, maybe. I'm not grateful for it, but I didn't let it traumatize me. I turned that tragedy into triumph. I learned the lesson from that of like how valuable love is, and I made a family, and I've held on to it, and I homeschooled them, we eat dinner around the table, we sit around a fire, and we walk the dog together. It's Norman Rockwell.
So
Well, so again, I got back to Canada, and we went to get married, and I had to meet her father, and her father was the junkie I rolled in the carpet. And that's one of the bonds I think that saved me a lot of grace. Some reason we've always felt like that was destiny, that we were meant to be together. A few years, like, I mean, again, most of the time I was chefing. I was working hard. She was stay-at-home mom. I paid all our bills. I didn't go out partying with the chefs. I'd come home. I'd work 10, 12-hour days, 6 days a week. I'd work really hard so that I could move up. It wasn't really till 2020 that I started to act the maggot, up till then, I'd always been, took her on holidays, and I threw great birthday parties for her, and I was faithful and wasn't aggressive. I was a bit sarcastic and a bit condescending as the chef in me. But it was really only the last, like, she was not happy that I was selling drugs during COVID. You know what? We lost our income, and we were struggling, and I always knew how to do that, and that she got really mad when it spiraled out of control, and she felt like our house was being used by like gangsters to do. And she was thrilled when I called them and said, you got to pick all this up, and they're like, there's going to be serious repercussions for you. And I said, there's going to be much more serious repercussions for me if I don't. And they had no idea what I was just like, nope. And they're like, okay. And they came and picked it up, and it was all a bluff. It was always a bluff. There was never any threat. They just say that to people. Bunch of big black guys with Dublin license plates roll up to your house and say stuff like that. You're like, whoa, it's, but there was no repercussions for it. They came and picked up all their drugs and drove off, and they left my life. But they'd always told me I had to, and I owed them money, and I had to keep doing this. And I thought, oh, I'll teach them how to repress. Like, okay, I'll get out of this. I'll fucking work my way out of it, And then it just got worse and worse. I was at the point where I was terrified one day they were going to load me into a car and bring me off to some fucking bunker and make me fucking, I don't know. They were, I could take a kilo of their cocaine and turn it into 2 kilos that got more compliments than the pure cocaine. And they were like, you have to show us how to do this. I was like, no, like, these powers will only turn to evil. And then you watch the damage it does to your community, And at one point, I had a stencil made that it showed a guy with his hands behind his back. The guard's arresting a young kid, and there's a guy with this black ski mask on counting money right in front of the guard. And I put it around all the spots where I knew their runners waited. I spray painted it there, and it said, he gets rich while you get arrested and poison your community. Don't be his fucking puppet. And I put it up in all the spots where the runners sat. And I eventually, one guy came up to me on the street, and he was like, all right, bro, you the guy that does them paintings? I was like, yeah. He's like, I fucking want to buy one. Fuck, did you do those in Dushka? I was like, yeah. He's like, that changed my life. So they met me at Caribou, and he came to meet me at Caribou to pick it up, and his mom came in, and she gave me a hug. I was like, again, a kid fucking did not quit selling drugs because of that painting. It's too funny. It's too funny, man. If you do one painting that makes a kid stop selling drugs, that's fine.
Yeah.
I offer art classes to, I don't care if you're a traveler, Palestinian, Ukrainian, a trans, or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you're just troubled in life,
Yeah.
I owe that back to this city.
Okay.
You know, and so I'm gonna, and I just, people always tell me, like, all my art I sell by donation. People are always like, you can't do that, but then why do I have my own studio and gallery?
Yeah.
On the goodness, I would bet my farm on the goodness of mankind.
Right.